Hello everybody, welcome to St. Olaves homework booklet number 11. We are beginning with matrices, as you can see here. So we have to find a relationship between these two shapes and the same pattern for this. Question number 1, we see that these shapes are almost interlapped with each other. However, there's no second line. It doesn't look anything like this. So they're joining together. We can see that the orientation of these shapes don't change. It's not like this pentagon here experiences a rotation or mirror symmetry. Same with this, we don't really see this shape either. It's merely the fusion of the two. Therefore, if this doesn't change, we can cross out A, we can cross out C, D, I guess this stays the same, so let's not cross that out straight away, and then E. However, if this shape is on the left-hand side, then it will be also on the left-hand side. If this arrow is on the right-hand side, then it should also be on the right-hand side. So we are left with B as our answer. The next one, question number 2, we have two components here. We have this, let's call it like a semicircle type shape, and then a whole circle. We have, in the next one, this hexagon and a big outer perimeter square. Now what's happening here? We have this shape goes to the top right and the outer perimeter goes to the top left. So the square will go to the top right. We can definitely cross out B because the same thing is not happening there. If the hexagon has to go to the top right, that means we can cross out C and we are left with A, D, and E. Let's pay attention to the colours. This semicircle shape is black at first, however it becomes white. The circle is white at first, it becomes black. They inverse their colours. We have a grey hexagon in the top right corner. The only one with a grey hexagon in the top right corner is D. Nice. Question number 3. So in each one for question 3, we have, if we go this way, let's try and find the pattern this way. In this little rectangle here, we know that in every space is taken up. And what I mean by that, I guess this one is easier to see over here. If we have one at the bottom, we have one in the middle and at the top. We have a circle at the bottom, we have one at the middle, and we have one at the top. So therefore, if we have one at the top and have one at the bottom, we are missing this middle one over here. So we need a circle in the middle. Let's cross out, not E, actually, that is a circle in the middle. We also cross out, that's the only one we'll cross out, that's fine. Next, we pay attention to the colour. Every time we have black, grey, white. Black, grey, white, we always have to complete this trio. If we have white, and let's rub this out so we don't get confused. If we have white and black, we are missing grey. Therefore, we know we need a grey circle. Cross out A and B. This last little triangle is what we have to pay attention to. Every time it starts with small, medium, big, small, medium, big. So we are looking for something big over here. The only one with the bigger triangle, you can see that C's triangle is bigger than E, so we are left with C. Question number 4. For question number 4, lots of things to see here. First thing I see is that this semicircle quadrant is sort of reflected in this mirror line here and finds itself from the top left to the bottom right. So we're sort of flipping it over. Or if you think about it as a 90-degree or 180-degree rotation, you can also think about it like that. So let's do the same thing. Let's reflect it over this mirror image. We need something going from the top right to the bottom left. Let's cross out the ones that don't fit there, C, D, and E. Next, let's pay very close attention to, let's cross these out so you can see. The next thing we need to pay attention to is these colours. Now, if I think about it in positions, we have each one going up one position. So this is position 1, 2, 3, and 4. This hatch moves all the way back to position 1 from 4 to 1. 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 4. Let's see if that matches. This grey goes to position 2. We're pushing out the pattern. This dotted one goes from position 2 to 3. And this white one goes from position 3 to 4. Let's push out the pattern again, push out the position. Let's see here. We know we are between A and B. If we push out the pattern, just the easiest one I can see is this black one will be pushed out to the 4th position. Therefore, A is our right answer. Question number 5. First thing, we can see that the lines here correspond to the number of shapes in the right hand. So we have 4 lines here. It almost draws the square over here, if you can try and imagine that. But let's not confuse ourselves if you can't. If we have 6 lines on the outside, we need a hexagon on the outside with 6 sides. Cross out A, C. Now, we are left here between B, D, and E. Now, you'll notice that B and E are the same, so we'll treat them like one answer. We just need to know, is the point at the top or is it flat at the top? Now, we see that these lines always connects to a point. It's never connecting to a flat side, if that makes sense. These 2 lines connecting to those 2 points. So, if we have these lines connecting to a point, we know that the hexagon needs to have a point at the top. Therefore, the answer is B or E. They are the same answer. We now have question 6. Let's have a look at NVR codes. So over here we have I first noticed the shapes on the inside. We have cross, we have heart, cross, heart. Now what I see in common here is that J seems to represent the cross and that K seems to represent the heart. So if I just write that out here, cross equals J and heart equals K, that will help us with doing the question. Now we have a heart here, that means we need to have K. We're going to cross out C and E, and it looks like the only things that have in common, so we have a G over here and we have a G over here, and the only things in common is their orientation of this elliptical shape. So it's sort of going at a 45-degree angle, sort of top left to bottom right. So if we have it going this way, we know that this cone at the top means the orientation of the outer perimeter shape. If it's looking the most similar to H, this orientation over here from bottom left to top right. Therefore, if we are looking for H, that we cross out A and we cross out D, B is the right answer. Now, question 7, let's try and match. The things that I see is different is sort of the pattern of the white and the black. So S and S are quite similar. Well, they are similar. T and T are similar. So I'm going to assume that it's to do with the shading in the middle, not the dots just yet. So if we have S, we know that the pattern sort of goes thick, the thick black lines, and if we have T, then we have the thick white lines. If you can see that, here we go. Thin black, thick black, thin black. If we have T, we have thin white, thick white, thin white. So let's try and match this up. We have, this is mostly matching the shading here, S, the S ones. You can see it does not look like the T ones. So we need to have S at the top. Let's cross out B and D. Now this one you have to pay quite close attention to. We're focusing on these bottom letters. Now I notice that D and D are the same. Let me try and find a connection here. I can see that for D and D, we both have 2 dots on the outside. D has 1 dot here, 1 dot here. D has 1 dot here, 1 dot here. Now, if we have, maybe that's better to see, 1 dot, 1 dot, 1 dot, 1 dot. We know that G has 0 dots on the outside, and F has 1 dot. So we know 1 dot is F, 2 dots is D, 0 dots is G. What does our shape have? It has 1 dot. Therefore, we match it up to the F. We get SF as our answer, so A. Question 8. So the first difference I see, let's go to the black pen, is the hatching. I might have to zoom in a little bit more for this. Hopefully you can see. Yes, you can. We have the hatching is different. So this one is sort of going, remember I always do it, if you've seen the other video, I always draw out the hatch just so I can see it clearer. I know that these two are the same. This is horizontal and this one's sort of going the other way. If these two are the same, these hatches, from bottom left to top right, the only similarity within them is this F. So I know that this middle letter is going to correspond to the hatching. Which one does this match? This one is the same hatching as the last one. We have G in the middle, therefore we should have G in the middle. Next, we count the amount of things. Let's rub this out so we don't get confused. We know that the number of crosses is changing. That's very apparent. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3 again. I see that this is a similar amount of crosses to this. So if these are the same, what's in common? We have J, so we know that the first letter is to do with the amount of crosses. Let's go back to our shape. We have 2 crosses, and which one has 2 crosses? We have K over here, therefore D is our right answer. Going on to question number 9. So we have Z, X, and Y. So Z seems to me that it's going at this right angle. So you can see here that Z is at a right angle again. Then we have X sort of at an acute angle, and then Y is the only one that's horizontal. So we know it definitely has to start with Y. So let's cross out A, C, and D. We're left with B and E. Now, just out of elimination, we're left with NSPS, and we have YPS here, YMS there. And we can see that with the M's, we generally have the arrows facing outwards. So with M, the arrows are facing outwards. However, we have the arrows here facing inwards, and the only one that faces inwards is the one with PS. You can see that they're meeting in the middle here. Therefore, the answer has to be E. This one, we can straight away see that these S's are common, and therefore this little block is common too. We have this middle bit on the slant going this way, on the slant going this way. However, JO is going that way. So we know that J corresponds to which way this middle line is going. Therefore, we know it has to have J at the beginning. If we know it has to have J at the beginning, we can cross out all of them and just get A as our answer. So for 11, we have R is common in all of them. So I would say we have to have R as the first because they're all circles. So I'm going to cross out D straight away. And then S and S are common. Then we have T, which is different. And what I've noticed is different is that T is a grey shading and S is a black shading. Therefore, we can assume that it is TRT. So we can cross out B. The last thing we have is whether it's P or Q or even S. But first of all, we would be able to cross out S instantly because we know that S goes in the middle. But let's just confirm. Most of the time, if it's Q, it's going to be a line down the middle. If it's P, we see there's no line down the middle. Therefore, we know that the answer is going to be A, and that is the NVR section. This is the comprehension section for the booklet. We have creating Chinese American food. Let's go to the first question. If we read this text, let's just do a quick summary. It's quite, and I always find that a summary always helps with my comprehension questions, just like to make sure that you've understood the main point of the text. It's mainly just giving historical context for Chinese American immigrants, but how this has specifically related to food. Now, it doesn't say that food is the only thing they've contributed, but it is a large part of what they have contributed. Let's go to question number 1. So here is question number 1. Based on the passage, why do Chinese immigrants find it difficult to assimilate to American life? Let's just zoom out so we can see all parts of the question. So these are all parts of the question. 1 focuses on discrimination and xenophobia from white settlers. This one's talking about lacking skills. C is talking about that the Chinese just couldn't preserve their cultural norms. However, we know from the text that's not the case. We'll go back to visit it. And in D, they preferred to maintain their Chinese identity, so implying that they didn't want to assimilate. So let's go back to the text. So over here, let's get the highlighter out. You'll see that it directly talks about racism and xenophobia as a root cause of why all of this made it very difficult for the Chinese immigrants to find work. Work is sort of implied as a way of assimilation. What does assimilation mean? It means like getting more into the culture, the local culture, for example, maybe adopting American practices or American clothes. Now, let's see why the others aren't correct. One of the options implied a lack of skill. Now, it was not really a lack of skill that's being talked about here because it's the racism and xenophobia that an intense fear or dislike that made them unable to work. Not that it doesn't mention that they couldn't do the work, it's just that nobody wanted them to do the work. They did try to assimilate, so one of the options, let's revisit which one. So over here it says that the Chinese preferred to maintain their Chinese identity. However, from the text it implies that they tried to work, it was just the racism that didn't allow them to. So throughout crossing the other options, we can choose A as our answer. For question number 12, according to the passage, what is the main reason Chinese immigrants opened businesses like laundries, jewelry shops, and restaurants? Let's revisit the text. First, let's have a quick read. Wanted to challenge American businesses, prove their worth. If you read the text, you know that this is most likely not it. Discrimination and limited work opportunities forced them to become entrepreneurs. This is looking more like it because they themselves opened businesses. They didn't have to join up the work because they faced discrimination and racism. When we're trying to go off exactly the text, it says they were skilled in these trades and found it easier to establish themselves. It doesn't really talk about the skills themselves, and they sought to preserve their cultural traditions and spread Chinese influence. Now, we sort of know that we can cross out every time like this type of answer that they tried to preserve their cultural traditions, because from the text we know that they very much tried to adopt to the American way. So let's cross out D. And let's go back to the paragraph where it talks about opening businesses. So question 1 kind of helps us, or like 11. So question 1 of the comprehension section. It talks about racism and xenophobia as the direct cause of why thus, remember, look for words like thus, which tell us reasons for something. So because of this racism, they found it difficult to find work in someone else's business. Thus, the Chinese in America had little choice but to open their own businesses. Opening your own business means you are an entrepreneur, starting your own business. So it's not that they wanted to challenge, they had to because as a direct cause of the racism. Therefore, let's go back to our question. So discrimination and limited work opportunities is what forced them to become. We want to take exactly from the text, not infer. This is the closest that we can get from the text. Question 13. What can be inferred about the popularity of Chinese immigrants in America by 1900? So let's look exactly in the text when it talks about by 1900. And I can see by 1900 over here. So let's read around the text. Let's say by 1900, Chinese restaurants were in every major American city and most minor ones too. So we are gravitating towards D as an answer because they spread in both. They spread in major and minor cities. Now, have caution with other answers because it doesn't really talk about being localized to like mostly American diners. It talks about how you have upscale restaurants, you have smaller scale restaurants. Maybe American diners do like it, but that's not the only place. So the one about American diners, we can cross that out as an answer. So let's cross this one out. They were less common in minor cities compared to major cities. We know that's false because in fact the text says that they were in every major American city and most minor ones. While they're comparatively less so, they're still very prevalent in both areas. So D is still looking like the only option. So we're still focusing on D, and then it doesn't really talk about how Chinese immigrants and communities like them. In fact, it does talk about how it's quite different from Chinese food because it's incorporating American food. So the answer would be D. Question number 14. Why do Chinese American restaurants incorporate American ingredients into their cooking? To attract American customers who are familiar with and prefer those ingredients, to add an exotic touch, to make their food more authentic, and differentiate themselves from other Chinese restaurants. Now, C, we can completely cross out because we know that Chinese cuisine, in fact, let's go back to the text. Typical Chinese meals, let's get the highlighter. Typical Chinese meals is vegetable heavy. However, the typical Chinese American meal consisting of meat covered in a sauce, because meat, as it says here, is more readily available. So it's not representative of authentic Chinese cuisine. They are trying to appease the Americans. So that gives us a clue as to what the answer should be. We can cross out C and we're leaning towards A. Now, it doesn't really talk about adventure as the main premise. It clearly implies here that it's not trying to be adventurous, it's actually trying to be exactly like what the Americans eat. If the Americans wanted to eat meat, they tried to incorporate that into their own food. Therefore, we can cross out adventurous and, oops, that makes it look like we can cross out thing. Let's make that a little bit more clear over here. And so, to differentiate themselves from other Chinese restaurants, there's a general trend that Chinese American food is a mix of Chinese. So, generally, a Chinese American restaurant will be similar to the next Chinese American restaurant. So, the text is definitely making it more out of necessity and assimilation rather than trying to make a unique menu. Therefore, 14A is the correct answer. Question 15 talks about the growth of the railroad. Let's use the highlighter. Growth of the railroad to impact the distribution of Chinese restaurants in the United States. So be careful. What are we talking about here? Chinese restaurants. Whoops, that was a little bit too skewed. Chinese restaurants. Let's go back to that paragraph. Or let's read through the solutions first. Transportation of authentic Chinese ingredients. Let's underline the key words of how these answers are differentiating. A talks about ingredients. B talks about immigrants and that the railroads allow them to settle in major cities where restaurants were established. It's talking about settling in major cities. C is talking about provided Chinese Americans with more work opportunities. We're talking about work opportunities in railroad related industries. Now let's see, this one has nothing to do with what the question is. It's talking about Chinese restaurants. We're not talking about work opportunities in railroad related industries. Let's cross C out. D, it brought Chinese immigrants and restaurants to various parts of the country beyond California. Even without going to the text, I can already see that D is the only one that is mentioning the restaurants. The others only focus on immigrants or only focus on ingredients, but let's verify our answer. So it's talking here about how railroad brought opportunities. Yes, we have the work opportunities, but we know we crossed out the answer. It had nothing to do with the restaurants. Be very careful with the word choices here. It talks about how Chinese Americans increased in number as they moved along, and they also established Chinatowns as they sprung up in major cities, even in smaller cities. So Chinese immigrants settled and opened up businesses. So this is implying that due to the growth of railroads, Chinese people were able to move around more and open up more restaurants. So let's go back to the question. It doesn't talk exclusively about ingredients. Let's cross out A. Enable turn that this is correct, but it's not referring properly to the question. We are left with D as the right answer for 15. Question 16, it's talking about Chinese American restaurants differing from purely Chinese cuisine. Now, we already talked about this in some of the other questions, and just reading through the solutions they give us, again, we can cross out. We know from before questions that it caters mainly to small town customers. It doesn't say that. It talks about major cities, it talks about Chinatowns and major cities, and you can have upscale restaurants. Let's cross out C. And the whole text focuses on Chinese American food and the rise of it. So purely Chinese restaurants, the text talks about how it needs to use a lot of American influences in order to appease local populations in America. So we're sort of between A and B. Now, what's the difference? Let's go back to the text. The text focuses a lot on the use of meat in these dishes because America had a lot of meat to offer. It doesn't say that it relied heavily anywhere because if you see here, Chinese American meals consisting of a meat covered in a sauce with vegetables. So they haven't really changed the ingredients. It's just the fact that these ingredients are incorporated with meat. So it's not really fair to say that these meals rely heavily on American ingredients. Therefore, we can cross out B and leave A as our right answer. So for question number 17, what can be inferred about the perception of Chinese American food by most Americans? This is key. We're not talking about other Chinese immigrants. We're talking about Americans' perceptions of Chinese American food. Now, I think straight away we can cross out exotic and foreign cuisine because they've been having Chinese food since the Victorian era, so 1850, around then. So it's definitely not exotic and foreign at this point. They said that in most major towns or most places there is a Chinatown or a Chinese restaurant. Now be careful that this question does talk about inferring, so you might not find a strict answer in the text. With option C, they say they associate it with traditional Chinese dishes. I think if we're inferring, we have to make a general assumption. We can't say any statement that is concrete, and I think that's the biggest clue with inferring things, that it doesn't say anywhere that they associate it with traditional Chinese dishes. They said that where's this? They're all staples. So chop suey, Mongolian beef, sesame chicken are all staples of the modern and 19th century Chinese restaurant. That's all they said about authentic or modern. They never said that Americans think it's traditional Chinese cuisine. Maybe some do, but they're saying that they definitely associate it. So they associate it. The only one that I say we can really infer is that Americans might not be aware of its origins and connections to American history. Now, this is important because we're inferring about the text. We're not making a concrete guess or a concrete conclusion. They're saying they might not be aware rather than they do consider it, they do associate. They might not be aware of its origins and connection to American history. I know I learned some things in that text that I didn't know. So maybe some do, maybe some don't. D is the only one that we can infer. Therefore, D is the answer. Question 18. Question 18. According to the passage, what role did racism and xenophobia play in shaping the Chinese American experience? They encouraged Chinese immigrants to preserve their cultural identity. Now, this whole passage is about having to grow out of that cultural identity in order to assimilate with the Americans. So let's cross out A. It led to the establishment of Chinese American businesses out of necessity. This is looking more like the answer. Let's read all of them though. They hindered the growth of Chinese American restaurants in major cities. We know from the whole text that this is not true. There is a huge rise of Chinese American restaurants in not only major cities, but down to small ones as well. You can cross out C. And they led to the rejection of Chinese cuisine in favor of American dishes. We also know this is not true because Chinese dishes changed to accommodate American flavors and American dishes so that they could be accepted. So all of them are looking a bit funny to me apart from B, which is the correct answer. Now, for question 19, what can be inferred about Chinese immigrants' ability to maintain their traditional customs and beliefs in America? Now, make sure that you know that in the text it says nowhere that they willingly abandoned their traditional customs. They said because we established in the previous questions that it was because of racism and xenophobia. Maybe some Chinese Americans did want to abandon it, but this was largely due to the fact that it was due to discrimination. So we can cross out C. It was not willingly. They were able to assimilate to American customs without any resistance. They know that they couldn't get work. We know that they couldn't get work because of racism and xenophobia. You can cross out D, so this one's not correct. And then they successfully preserved most of their traditions despite challenges. The whole text is about how they had to get sort of a 50-50 thing with Chinese American food. So they did have difficulty in preserving their traditions. Therefore, B is the right answer, that they did face difficulty in maintaining their customs wholly due to discrimination. As, let's use the text, this discrimination is racism and xenophobia in question. Question number 20, last one of the comprehension section, based on the passage, why is understanding the history of Chinese American cuisine important? For this, let's go back to the paragraph. Why is diversity important? Or why is Chinese American food important? It's definitely talking about the bigger picture here, not just restaurants. It says that food, while they did contribute a lot to food, it's not the only thing they contributed. But this shouldn't negate the influence of food. So the diversity of food options available to most Americans is certainly one of the most great aspects of life. It actually shapes history and culture, and it's one of the largest populations in the world. So it's talking about a bigger picture, that most texts often end with a bigger picture. And if we go to the solutions, is that it's not just talking about the United States. I think most major cities entail diversity. It's definitely, the picture is way bigger than this. It's just encouraging Americans to try Chinese dishes, and it does a lot more with the whole text. Kind of debunks the idea of Chinese American restaurants being authentically Chinese. So it's not about the authenticity. It's sort of between these two, and I think the text definitely has a bigger picture than just the United States, because it talks about history and culture, which most places have. So it's definitely B, that it showcases the blending of cultures and contributions made by immigrants. And that is the comprehension section. Let's begin the math section. We start off with algebra. Question number 1, we are given the perimeter of this shape. We need to find the area. Let's highlight the important bits. Area. The perimeter is 40 centimeters. So using that, we're going to try and find the value of x. So let's put in our missing measurements. We have x here, and be careful. We actually over here have a different measurement here. We be careful not to think that this is 9 centimeters as well. Right now, I'm going to put this in a different color. Let's do it maybe in a yellow. It will show up. Yes, that looks good. This is the measurement y. Now, using this, we know that, let's change this back to black. This whole side is 9 centimeters. 9 centimeters. And we know that this side here is x, because if this is x and that's x and that's x, this must be x. There is no way that this side can be bigger than this unless it was a trapezium or something. But these are all the same, therefore this has to be x. It is a square. So this helps us. So we have x, x, x. So 3 x's, 3 times x is equal to 9 centimeters. So we know that 1x is equal to 3 centimeters. I did that just by dividing both sides by 3. Actually, let's do that slowly, just so we can see all the steps. Over here, we're going to divide by, so x, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, 9 over 3 centimeters. So x is equal to 3 centimeters. Good. Now that we know x is equal to 3 centimeters, let's put that over here, just so we remember. X is equal to 3 centimeters. Oop, capital. Great, let's come back. So if we know x is equal to 3 centimeters, let's fill in our missing measurements. This whole side is n. This whole side, let's go back to the yellow. If this bottom bit is y, then we know this bit will also be y. Oh, y. So let's write that out as a sum. I'm going to zoom in here just so we can see a little bit better. Yep, there we go. And then let's write this out. Let's do this slowly, and let's cross them off as we add them. That would be a good idea. So total perimeter, actually let's write this like this. 40 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x's. So 5x, because remember we are drawing a line all the way 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x. Adding these two things, we have y. So this red line will help you contextualize what I'm adding. Plus 2y. And then don't forget, we have to also count this. Plus 9. So we are left with this sum. Now your writing out should look neater than mine. I'm on the trackpad. But let's just balance the equation. Or let's rearrange the equation. So from before, we found out the value of x. We can substitute our 3 centimeters in there. So we are going to do 40. Let's line up our equal signs, is equal to 5 multiplied by 3. The brackets mean multiply. Plus 2y plus 9. Then we have 40 is equal to 15 plus 2y plus 9. Then we have 40 subtract 15 subtract 9. We're going to subtract 15 and 9 from both sides. Let's scroll down so you can see over here. That becomes, let's actually write this out. So 40 subtract 15 subtract 9 is equal to 2y. Try and follow along. We then have 16 is equal to 2y, which gives us, let's divide both sides by 2, 16 divided by 2 to get 1y. Therefore, we are left with y is equal to 8 centimeters. So our final answer is 8 centimeters. Hopefully that all makes sense. So, question 2. We're going to need some space. Let's clear this out. So here we are given basically simultaneous equations or simultaneous equations. We have to try and decode this to write our own equations and then solve them. So let's write some text. Let or circle is equal to x, and then square is equal to y. This is going to become very important, and let me just label them. X, and then let's make that y. So try and keep that in mind. I'll try and do them in different colors as well. So we have 2x, there we go, 2x, actually we'll just do them all in one color because the diagram is there. 2x plus 3y is equal to 39. Now 1x plus 1y is equal to 17. Now make sure you count it properly. Yes, units don't matter, that's fine. We are going to label this equation. This is equation 1, and this is equation 2. So now we have two equations. We now have to solve to get the value of 1x and 1y. In order to solve them, we are going to subtract equation 2 from equation 1. So if we're going to subtract, 2x minus x gives us 1x, and then 3y minus y gives us plus 2y, which is equal to, in fact, since we are only finding the weight of one circle, we only have to find x. Now, how do we do this? In order to get rid of our unknown variable y, we have to write y in terms of x. What I mean by this is, let's focus on equation 2. We can rearrange this to say y is equal to 17 minus x. Now, when you go and rearrange the equation, you will have no more y's because you have rewritten y as in terms of x. So you can just solve the equation for x, which will then find you the weight of one circle. So let's rearrange this equation. Let's write here, rearranging equation 1 is equal to, we can input this equation back into this equation, and then we can multiply it out. So we have 2x, so this is basically equivalent to 2x plus 3. Now we know our y, we can get rid of our y. 17 minus x, we're going to input this, I'll highlight it at the end. 17 minus x is equal to 39. Now, if you can see here, we re-put this equation back into here. Now let me undo this just so it doesn't get too crowded. There we go. And then we can just simply solve and multiply out. We have 2x plus 17. We're going to multiply out. Let's do this in a different color. Multiply it out and then multiply it out to give us 51 minus 3x is equal to 39. As we subtract 51 from both sides, we end up with, so let's solve for x on the left-hand side because variables are always on the left-hand side. We end up with minus x, 2x minus 3x is equal to minus x. Subtract 51 from both sides, we get minus 12. we can just multiply both sides by -1. We get x is equal to 12. There are no units here, so our answer we can put down as 12. Perfect. So for question 3, we are again going to be doing simultaneous equations. So let's give ourselves a little bit of space over here. So Johnny and Jennifer went to the school canteen at break time. Johnny bought 2 pears. So we know that we already have to call our variable something. Let's say that so pears equals x, and let's say orange equals y. Now we've named our variables, we can start writing the equation. So I know that, let's get our black pen out, and we should be able to see this. We know 2x, so 2 pears, plus 3y, so 3 oranges, equals 95p. We know that 2 pears, again, 2x plus 1 orange, so plus y, is equal to 65p. Those are our equations. Let's label them equation 1. Label them equation 2 because we're going to have to keep it organized when we start rearranging equations into one another. Now we can solve. So luckily from the first equation, they've been generous enough to give us 2x in both equations, which means we can rearrange this 2x in terms of, so let's write rearranging equation 1. Rearranging equation 1. We know that this 2x is equal to 95 minus 3y. We subtracted 3y from both sides, and you'll see we got that from equation 1 over here. We just simply subtracted 3y and basically took it to the other side. Now, we are going to substitute this back into equation 2. Substitute. Here, equation 2. That means we are going to be substituting this 2x, and let me highlight this for you, this 2x back into this equation over here. It's the exact same thing, they are equivalent to each other. Now let me undo this so we don't get confused with a bunch of highlights. So rearranging equation 2, this 2x, we have 95, this is equivalent to, let's carry on our equivalent sides, 95 minus 3y plus y, as we're just simply copying equation 2, equals 265. Let's subtract 65 from both sides. 95 minus 65. On the right hand side we get 3y minus 2y, like so. Actually this will be just the 1y, there's no 2y here. So 3y minus y, this becomes 30 is equal to 2y. We are then going to divide both sides by 2 to get 15 is equal to y. We have now found the price of 1 orange. Let's put that in over here. But we are not done. We, after finding the price of 1y, which is an orange, we need to put this back into the equation to find pears. Now the simplest equation we can use is, let's go back to using this equation over here. I'll highlight this over here. So we are going to rearrange this. Just for space, I'm going to say substitute y into equation 2. And after we have that, we can say that, so 2x plus y, this is equation 2, plus y, and y is actually equal to 15. So let's put that in because we found that out. 15 is equal to 65. Therefore, just continuing this, we have 2x, subtract 15 from both sides, we have 50. Divide both sides by 2, we have x is equal to 25p. So it's not x, it's actually the cost of one pair. We can put 25p back in here. And those are the prices of our 2 fruits. So question number 4. Mandy thinks of a number. She multiplies it by 7 and subtracts it by 21. Let's call this number x. So x equals the number. She multiplies this number, which means 7 times x, so 7x, and subtracts from this total 21. Now they tell us that the answer to this equation, they've basically told us how to write an equation, is equal to 35. Let's solve this equation to find x, i.e. Mandy's number. Let's keep 7x on this side, and 7x, we're going to add 21 to both sides to get it onto this side. So 35 plus 21. Let's zoom in a bit over here. So if 7x is equal to 56, we have divide both sides by 7, we get 56 over 7, and x is equal to 8. This means Mandy's number is 8. Question 5. Sum of 5 consecutive whole numbers is 100. So how do we denote consecutive numbers with algebra? So if we start off with x, the consecutive number, so what does consecutive mean? It means right after each other, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all consecutive. Therefore, each time we are adding 1. 1 plus 1 gives you 2, 2 plus 1 gives you 3. So if x is the first, we have x plus 1, x plus 1, x plus 2, that's 3 consecutive numbers, x plus 3, and then we ultimately finish with x plus 4. Now, is this 5 consecutive numbers? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does this all add up to? Let's add up all the like terms. How many x's do we have? We have 5x. We have 1 plus 2, which is equal to 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is equal to 10. 5x plus 10. And they're telling us that the sum is equal to 100. So we end up with 5x plus 10 is equal to 100. Therefore, we get 5x. Let's subtract 10 from both sides. We end up with 90. Just continuing this on from over here, we have 5, we'll divide both sides by 5. So 90 divided by 5. Therefore, x is equal to 18. Therefore, the correct answer is 18. In a similar fashion, we have the sum of two numbers. We're continuing question 5 is 22. So what does this mean? The first number is x, let's say, and the second number is y. Whatever they are, doesn't matter. We're just calling them an unknown. So x plus y is 22. The difference is 4. So we know that difference means subtract. This number, subtracting this number, is equal to 4. Just like before, we see some simultaneous equations. This one is easy for us. We're just going to add these questions together. So we end up these equations together. So we get 2x. These cancel out. Plus y minus y just gives you 0 is equal to 26. Therefore, we know that x is equal to 26 divided by 2, and x is equal to 13. We're just going to box this up. Every time I find a value, I box it up just so it's really easy for me to find when I substitute it in the next equation. Just to give ourselves some space, we are going to substitute back into, I guess, equation 2 is much easier to substitute into. It's very easy. We have 13. Let's write substituting into equation 2. Over here we have our found value of x. X minus y is equal to 4. Therefore, y we're going to add to both. So 13, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides to get 9 and add y to both sides to get y. Therefore, y is equal to 9. We found our other value. Therefore, we have 13 and 9. So we are given some more simultaneous equations here. 2 packets of crisps, 2 drinks cost £1.50. So let's say crisps is equal to C, drink is equal to D. Now, let's begin writing our equations. 2C plus 2D is equal to 150. Let's write this in P's. We don't really want to work with decimals. So we have 2C plus 2D equals 150. We have also given here that 2C plus D, plus D is equal to 110. Let's label these. 1, this is equation 1, this is equation 2. What this will help us do is find the price of 1, so we can then substitute it in to get 3 crisps and 4 drinks. So what we're going to do is subtract these equations. These cancel out. 2C minus 2C gives you 0. 2D minus 1D is equal to D. We get D is equal to 40. So if D is equal to 40, we're going to substitute back into, let's say, equation 2. That means we get 2C. So this is equation 2. So 2C plus 40, we got that from how we figured it out, is equal to 110. Now just carrying on over here, if we know that 2C is equal plus 40 is equal to 110, let's rewrite this equation out. 2C is equal to, we're going to subtract 40 from both sides. Therefore, we get 2C is equal to 70. Therefore, C, divide both sides by 2, we get 35. P. But we are not done. We need to find the cost of 3 packets of crisps and 4 drinks. Therefore, we must have the equation 3C plus 4D is equal to, let's say, question mark. However, we know the value of these. We can substitute in 3 times 35, and I'll highlight this in a second so you can just see visually, plus 4 and then the price of a drink, which we found out is 40, which is then equal to 265. Let me just highlight that for you here. Let's do this. C was the cost of a packet. That's the 3 crisps. And then this, let's do pink. 4D was the price of a drink, which we found out over here. We found that all out. We get 265. Now remember, we don't want to answer in p. We want to answer in pounds. So 265p is equal to £2.65. So for question 7, we are given here if 3 over x times 4 over 7 is equal to 3 over 14. Calculate the value of x. So we know how cross multiplication works. We have to be able to cancel out or divide by rearranging the equation. So let's first multiply out this equation. We are given, let's do it like that, 3 times 4, we know how to multiply fractions. We're going to write this all down as one big fraction. 3 times 4 over 7x is equal to 3/14. Well, actually, let's not write that because it's already there. But this is equal to 12 over 7x. But 12 over 7x, let's do that over here, is also equal to 3/14. So what we're going to do is cross multiply. Let's write that over here just to remind ourselves. 3 over 14. We should know how to solve out this equation. Let's do it over here. Let's cross multiply, which means this goes there and that multiplies over here, which means, we are left with, let's write that out here, 12 times 14, 12 times 14, that's there going over here, is equal to 3 times 7x. Once we have that, we know this is equal to 168, which is equal to 21x. And just so we have more space, I'll continue that here. We have 8, divide both sides by 21, we get 8 is equal to x. So we end up with 8 over here. Great. Solving the following equations so we can see everything. We have 3x is equal to 36. We are going to divide both sides by 3. So dividing both sides by 3, we get x is equal to 12. Let's put that in as the right answer here. Next one, we have c plus 7 is equal to minus 15. To rearrange this equation, we subtract 7 from both sides. We get minus 15 minus 7. Let's make that negative sign more clear. Is equal to minus 22. This answer is minus 22. Then we have the same thing here. It's a 2-step problem. Add on 2 to both sides so that this cancels out. 14 plus 2. So 4p is equal to 16. P is equal to 4. Just going through the last question. X is equal to 80. Let's subtract 80 from both sides. This becomes 15 minus 80. Whoop. Let's just make that clearer. This becomes minus 65. Oops. C, there we go, minus 65. We have add 20 onto both sides. So 6y is equal to 66. Divide both sides by 6, we get 11. 11. Now this last one is sort of more complicated. We are going to first deal with the g's. Add 15g to both sides. If we add 15g to both sides, 10g plus 15g, actually let's try and line up these equal signs. So I'm going to start a bit more here. 10g plus 15g, and then we are going to subtract 400 from both sides. 645 minus 400. Then we get 25g is equal to 245. Therefore, g is equal to 245 divided by 25, which is equal to 49 over 5, which is also known as 9.8. So you could give your answer here as 9.8 or 49 over 5. So keyword here is equilateral triangle. And what does that mean? It means that all sides of a triangle are equal. Therefore, this is a known value, 21. If we're finding the value of x, let's put in 4x is plus 5 is equal to, we know is equal to 21 because all these sides are equal. Let's subtract 5 from both sides. We get 4x is equal to 21 minus 5. Therefore, we get 4x is equal to 16. X is equal to 16 over 4. So divide both sides by 4, we get 4. X is equal to 4. Not done. We are doing find the value of y. To do that, we do the exact same thing. We do 3y minus 3 is equal to 21. We add 3 to both sides. 3y is equal to 24. We know that dividing both sides by 3, we get 24 divided by 3, which is equal to 8. Therefore, we're not just finished. We need to write x is equal to 4, and then y is equal to 8. And that is the end of the math section. So this will be verbal reasoning section of St. Olaves, and for this we'll be looking at anagrams. Now I find that it very much helps to write everything down. So for question number 1, we can see here that the anagram, my brother has a pet, the word is spider. Now, what word does spider begin with? It begins with S, therefore the answer is D. For question 32, she solved A, the word is puzzle. And it's asking, what does it end with this time? So it ends with the letter E, therefore the right answer is E. Question 33, find a pair of letters that will end the first word, be at the end, and start the second. Now, if you are really confused, you can just eliminate hipsu is not a word. Hipru is not a word. Hipra, Hip T is not a word, hippo is a word, and point is a word. Therefore, 33D is the correct answer. So here we're looking out for a four-letter word at the end of one word, start of the next. So it has to be a word. Straight away, you can see that the word is feed, which you'll see over here. So we doesn't really make sense. The only word is feed. So let's write that out so all the options can make sense. Fourth letter, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth letter is D. Therefore, D is the right solution. Here, the mon is my favorite animal. We can see that the whole world is monkey. Now it's asking for the middle letter of the three-letter word. Therefore, the middle letter is E. C is the right option. So for 36, let's just zoom out so you can see all the options. Hopefully you can see that. So there's these here. So that last option is frantic calm. Frantic calm, all the rest are synonyms of each other, but frantic calm is the only one that they are antonyms. They're the opposite of, frantic is the opposite of calm. So for 37, let's analyze the rest of the words. All of the words are verbs. So sail, dive, run, jog, jump, skip, read, write. They're all verbs apart from option B, where the two words are nouns. Knife and fork are nouns. Therefore, the right answer is B. Over here, which word in the sentence is an adjective? Adjective is the key word. I eagerly studied adverb. So this is pronoun, adverb, verb, article. Fascinating is the only adjective we have because book is a noun. Therefore, C is the correct answer. We have to make the code corresponding to each letter. So just having a look over here, we can see that I is second and also third, just like I is second here and third over here. So I has to be 1. Therefore, we know that the middle one has to be 1 over here. Let's just confirm one other. We can sort of cross all of these out, but let's confirm the others. If that one's time, let's see, time. It's going to be 2, 1, something, so we can confirm it's A.